Jake never believed in urban legends until the night he heard the knocking. At first it was soft, almost polite, but when he looked through the peephole, he saw them, 2 children, standing still, their faces blank, except for their pitch black eyes. Welcome to Narrative Strokes. Today we are listening to The Black-Eyed Visitors. Jake had always enjoyed his solitude. Living on the edge of the woods gave him a sense of peace. No noisy neighbors, no city lights drowning out the stars, just the quiet hum of nature. But on that particular evening, something felt off. It started with little things. As he drove home from work, his headlights flickered momentarily, forcing him to pull over and check them. They were fine, just a glitch, he thought. Then, at the grocery store, he swore he saw a little girl watching him from the end of an aisle. When he turned his head, she was gone. By the time he got home, the feeling of unease had settled deep into his bones. He shook it off, making dinner and distracting himself with a movie. But just as he was about to head to bed, he noticed something strange. The porch light flickered, casting erratic shadows against the trees. And then, the whispering started. It was faint, almost like the wind, but there was a pattern to it. He stepped onto the porch, peering into the darkness. Nothing. The trees swayed in the cold night air, and the moon hung low in the sky. He convinced himself it was his imagination and locked the door behind him. That night, his dreams were vivid. He was in his house, but something was wrong. The walls felt too thin, like they would collapse if he leaned against them. The air was heavy, pressing against his chest. He heard knocking, soft at first, then insistent. He moved to the front door, but before he could look through the peephole, it creaked open on its own. 2 children stood there. Their faces were shadowed, but he could feel their eyes on him. "Let us in, Jake," the girl whispered. He wanted to run, to scream, but his body refused to move. The boy reached out, his fingers stretching unnaturally long, grabbing Jake's wrist. A jolt of ice spread through his veins. His vision blurred. He was falling. And then he woke up. Jake gasped, sitting upright, his sheets damp with sweat. His heart pounded. He reached for his phone. 3:12 a.m. His house was quiet. Too quiet. He forced himself to check the locks. Everything was fine. It was just a dream. But then, he saw them. 2 small, perfect handprints smudged against the glass of his front window. His stomach dropped. The air felt thick, heavy with something unseen. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but where would he go? Shaking, he wiped the prints away. Convincing himself it was a leftover smudge from earlier in the day, he crawled back into bed, leaving every light on. By morning, he almost convinced himself none of it had happened. He went about his day as usual, but the unease never left him. That night, the knocking returned. 3 slow, rhythmic taps. Knock, knock, knock. Jake hesitated. Who would be visiting at this hour? His parents were out of town, and he lived on the edge of the woods, where houses were far apart. No neighbors would stop by so late. The thought made his skin prickle. Another knock. Knock, knock, knock. Cautiously, he slid out of bed, grabbing his phone and turning on the flashlight. The dim hallway stretched toward the front door like a tunnel, shadows clinging to the corners. He tiptoed forward, every step making the floorboards creak under his weight. The knocking stopped just as he reached the door. Then, a voice. "Mister, we need help." Jake's breath hitched. The voice sounded wrong, soft, but emotionless, like someone reading from a script. He hesitated, peeking through the peephole. 2 children stood on the porch, barely illuminated by the flickering porch light. A boy and a girl, no older than 10, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, hooded coats too large for their small frames. They didn't look up, their heads slightly bowed. "Please," the girl said, "let us in." A chill slithered down Jake's spine. Something about them felt off. Their posture, their clothes, everything screamed unnatural. Jake cleared his throat, trying to sound firm. "What are you doing out so late?" The boy's head tilted slightly. "We need to use your phone. Our parents are worried." Jake's fingers tightened around his phone. Something wasn't right. They weren't shivering, even though it was nearly freezing outside. They weren't glancing around nervously like lost kids should. They weren't blinking. His stomach twisted. I can call someone for you." The girl stepped forward, pressing small hands against the door. "Let us in." Jake's heart pounded. His eyes flickered to the chain lock. He wasn't opening that door. Something deep in his bones told him not to let them in. The girl lifted her head. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Her eyes were black. Not just dark, pitch black. No whites, no pupils, just endless empty voids. His body locked up, a cold sweat breaking out over his skin. The boy looked up too, his gaze just as hollow. Their faces were blank, emotionless, but their eyes, they were wrong. Jake stumbled backward. "No, go away." A silence stretched between them. Then the girl sighed. "We can't come in unless you invite us." The words made Jake's blood freeze. How did she know that was exactly what he was afraid of? They didn't move, just stood there, waiting. The longer he stared, the harder it was to breathe. His limbs felt heavy, his thoughts foggy. "Let us in." The words weren't just spoken, they slithered into his ears, pressing against his mind. A command forcing itself into his thoughts. The room felt colder, the walls closing in. Jake squeezed his eyes shut, gripping his phone so hard his knuckles ached. "No." And then, silence. Slowly, trembling, he opened one eye. The porch was empty. His head spun. Were they gone? He reached for the peephole again, but a whisper hissed through the keyhole. "See you soon." Jake slammed the deadbolt, stumbling back, pulse hammering against his ribs. He checked the windows, locked the back door, turned every light on in the house. For the rest of the night, he sat curled up in the living room, every shadow stretching too far, every creak of the house setting his nerves on edge. At some point, exhaustion overtook him, and he dozed off on the couch, but his dreams were filled with whispers. "Let us in." When he jolted awake at dawn, his throat was dry, and his body ached from the tension. The house was silent now, eerily still. He forced himself to get up and check the door again. Nothing. No kids, no signs of forced entry. Just the empty porch, bathed in the pale morning light. He exhaled shakily, running a hand through his damp hair. Maybe he imagined it. Maybe he was overtired and his mind played tricks on him. Until he checked the porch. 2 small, perfect handprints smudged against the door. Jake's stomach dropped. He staggered back, a cold dread coiling in his gut. This wasn't over. His phone buzzed in his hand. No caller ID. Jake's breath hitched. With a shaking hand, he declined the call and watched as the notification vanished. The moment he put the phone down, it vibrated again and again. A soft knock sounded at the window. His blood ran cold. Slowly, he turned his head toward the noise, heart hammering so hard it hurt. Something was staring at him through the glass. It was them. Their faces were pressed against the window, those horrible, black, soulless eyes boring into him. He scrambled backward, fumbling for his phone, but his fingers were numb, useless. The knocking grew louder. Knock, knock, knock. The whispers returned, curling around his ears like smoke. Just let us in, Jake. They knew his name. His vision blurred with panic. His body screamed for him to run, but where? The house suddenly felt small, suffocating, the walls pressing in on him. The doorknob rattled violently. They were trying to get inside. Jake ran to the bathroom, locking the door behind him. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. The whispers followed him, seeping through the cracks. We'll wait, Jake. We will always wait. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. He didn't know anymore. Eventually, the whispers faded. The knocking stopped. When he finally came out of the bathroom, his home was silent. The windows were clear, the door untouched. But he knew better. They were still out there, waiting. The end. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, then comment down below and let me know what you think. I'll see you next time with another story. Until then, keep smiling and don't forget to like and subscribe.